BionicDance is filmed in front of a live studio audience.
Want to know more about atheists? Why not ask us a few questions? 'Cause I got answers. Let's do this. Greetings, fellow space travelers. BionicDance here. Today's video is rather less for my fellow atheists and more for the theists out there. Or possibly for the atheists who have just recently left their religion, not really sure how to articulate what might be going through their heads. I flatter myself to think I might be able to provide a little guidance in that area. I found a set of questions for atheists that, despite coming from Matt Slick, are possibly worth addressing. Some of the questions are either rewordings of previous questions or so closely related that treating them as separate would serve no reasonable purpose, so I've put them together. And begin.
How would you define atheism? Do you act according to what you believe in, there's no God, or what you don't believe in, lack of belief in God?
The second question kind of answers the first. Kind of. See, as an atheist, I don't believe in any gods, but that doesn't necessarily mean I believe that there is no God, just that I don't currently believe in one. If a God showed up one day, my mind is open to changing on the question of God's existence. The second question makes an assumption to which I thoroughly object. My actions are not in any way dictated by religious beliefs of any kind. I've often encountered from theists a notion that seems to be that if you have no religion, something must take its place, like there is a religion-shaped hole in everybody that must be filled by something with similar rules or dogma, something that commands us and guides us. And it just doesn't work like that. I'm no more influenced by religion or its lack than I am by the fact that I don't watch reality TV. I know that can be difficult for some theists to understand or accept, but that's the truth. If it were for religious people making nuisances of themselves and meddling in other people's lives unwelcome, they'd hold no more interest for me than those chowderheads who actually liked the rebooted Battlestar Galactica.
Do you think it is inconsistent for someone who lacks belief in God to work against God's existence by attempting to show that God doesn't exist?
I'm not working against God's existence. I'm working against religion's interference in people's lives. Showing that God doesn't exist seems like a perfectly reasonable way to get theists to knock it off. If God doesn't exist, then religion has no reason to exist either. Seems a reasonable strategy. Don't want me working against God's existence, as you put it? Then learn to share and play nicely with the other kids. Simple, simple.
How sure are you that your atheism properly represents reality? How sure are you that your atheism is correct?
Once again, it seems we're running into the problem of thinking that atheism and religion are the same. Atheism doesn't even address whether God actually exists. It's just someone not believing in God's existence. Where theism is believing in God, atheism is not believing. The fact that theism comes with a double-wide buttload of baggage does not mean that atheism must as well. How sure am I that atheism represents reality? Believe it or not, I am 17 days from turning 40. Yeah, you heard me. And in all those years, I have never seen anything to make me suspect that there might be a God. I've seen more evidence of UFOs coming to Earth from other planets than I have for a God's existence, and I haven't seen much of that. So how sure am I that atheism represents reality? Pretty darn.
How would you define what truth is?
Mostly by going to the dictionary. But I would not use truth in a discussion about the existence of something. Truth is far too slippery a concept, a word too easily manipulated by those who are more interested in winning an argument than in finding what is so. Truth can be used to describe principles or propositions as well as facts. When we say something is the truth, we're asserting that it is undisputably so. And yet, we often use it to describe our personal perspective. How often have you heard someone say, "That's the truth as I see it"? No, I would not use the word truth in this particular concept. I don't want to spend most of the conversation trying to clarify what I meant by it and explaining to someone else that they've dishonestly manipulated the word to serve their own ends.
Why do you believe your atheism is a justifiable position to hold?
Kinda already answered this one, didn't I? With regard to the existence of God, I have been given no reason to hold any other position. Not believing in God is the only position that fits the evidence with which I've been presented.
Are you a materialist or a physicalist or what?
On the website where I found these questions, there are links to definitions. The funny part? The second one flat out states that there is no difference between a materialist or a physicalist. According to these definitions, this would mean that you hold the position that everything is physical or material, that the physical world is all there is. And, much like with God, I've been given no reason to think otherwise. No assertion or story about there being more has ever been shown to be anything other than that. A story. There is no reason to believe any of them, to think they're not lies, delusion, or wishful thinking.
Do you affirm or deny that atheism is a worldview? Why or why not?
Atheism is not believing in any gods. That's all. The fact that religion comes with stories about gods creating the universe and handing down rules everybody has to live by does not mean atheism comes with that, too. If you can explain to me how lacking God belief will also tell people where existence came from and how to treat other people the way religion does, I'd love to hear it. Atheists have to figure that stuff out on their own. And they're not all going to agree any more than every religion, or any religion, agrees with all of the others. So no, atheism is not a worldview. It's one answer to one question. That's all.
Not all atheists are antagonistic to Christianity, but for those of you who are, why the antagonism?
Self-defense. Just giving back as good as we get. When you fuckers stop trying to force your beliefs on the rest of us, having laws passed that enforce your worldview on everybody, whether they hold it or not, we'll stop trying to get you to knock it off. I keep saying, learn to share and play nicely with the other kids. I know your holy book claims that your God gave this world to you, but we have to live here too. And I, for one, am not going to live like a Christian when I'm not one.
If you were at one time a believer in the Christian God, what caused you to deny his existence?
Well, I'm not and never was, so I'm going to say it was Star Wars. May the Force be with you.
Do you believe the world would be better off without religion? Do you believe the world would be better off without Christianity?
What, are you kidding me? No more bigotry disguised as morality. No more holy wars in the Middle East. No more hang-ups about sex, reproductive rights, or LGBT issues. No more trying to have unproved, unscientific creationism taught in science class. No more male or female genital mutilation. I could go on and on. Okay, granted, we'll only get presents on our birthday instead of Giftmas or Hanukkah or Kwanzaa or whatever the fuck you celebrate. But you know what? That's a sacrifice I'm willing to make. Would the world be better off without religion? Abso-fraggin-lutely, damn it.
Do you believe that faith in a god or gods is a mental disorder?
I wish I could say yes. I really do. That would make a lot of things simpler. And, yes, funnier. I won't deny having a snarky side. Unfortunately, unless being gullible is a mental disorder, I'm gonna have to say no.
Must God be known through the scientific method? If you answered yes to the previous question, then how do you avoid a category mistake by requiring material evidence for an immaterial God?
If you claim that there's an immaterial God, how could you possibly know that he exists unless he manifested physically or affected the physical world in some way? Religious people often say they feel God in their heart. Well, how do we know they don't either really, really want God to be real, or are scared of God, and or were indoctrinated from a young age, and this feeling of God isn't daydreaming or delusion? How could any claim of a God's existence be taken seriously without some sort of real-world manifestation? Frankly, I think that claiming God is immaterial is just a way of getting out of that little problem of not being able to prove his existence.
Do we have any purpose as human beings? If we do have purpose, can you as an atheist please explain how that purpose is determined?
If we have purpose, it's only that which we've made for ourselves. You might be able to say that we have purpose within nature. Certainly we fit a certain ecological niche. But purpose implies deliberate intent. Better to say that we have function within nature, not purpose. So no, we do not have inherent purpose. Nothing does. I'm sure it'd be very comforting to think otherwise, but it's not so.
Where does morality come from? Are there moral absolutes? If there are moral absolutes, could you list a few of them?
Morality comes from us, from how we feel about people's behavior. Don't like it? Call it immoral. Think it's just hunky-dory? Call it moral. Nobody agrees 100% with anybody else on what is moral or immoral. Even ask people who go to the same church and you'll find that they interpret biblical morality at least a little differently. So no, there are no moral absolutes. Most often when people talk about moral absolutes, things which they cannot consider being anything other than moral or anything other than immoral, it's usually something about which they feel strongly. Rarely do you hear someone say something is a moral absolute, but hey, no biggie. This suggests even further that morality is born of human emotion.
Do you believe there is such a thing as evil? If so, what is it?
William Shatner. Next question.
If you believe that the God of the Old Testament is morally bad, by what standard do you judge that he is bad?
By the standard of, I wouldn't want that crap he pulled to happen to me. Now, let's get one thing straight here. I consider the Bible to be, at best, horribly written sci-fi fantasy, and when I judge God, I do it the same way I judge, say, a Star Trek villain. So I don't want to hear anybody trying to pull any crap like saying that if I'm judging God, I have to think he's real. And like when the Cylons attacked the 12 colonies, or when Darth Vader blew up Alderaan, or when Yahweh sent bears to murder children for making fun of a bald guy, my thought is, wow, what a dick. I wouldn't want anybody pulling that kind of shit on me, and I probably shouldn't be doing it myself, and I think that's a perfectly lovely standard for judging someone.
What would it take for you to believe in God? What would constitute sufficient evidence for God's existence? Must this evidence be rationally based, archaeological, testable in a lab, etc., or what?
It's like I said before, if it does not manifest physically, I have no reason to believe that it's not wishful thinking or delusion. If you cannot test it in a lab, then there's no reason to think it isn't fakery or a prank. I mean, let's be realistic. The existence of an all-powerful deity is one hell of a huge assertion. It's gonna require just as much proof. But I'll tell you what would be a good start. Have God actually show up at some point. Big old face in the clouds talking at us. That'd be a heck of a sign. Maybe have him start doing some of that magic stuff, like healing lepers and amputees, that kind of thing. And do it before we start developing the technology to do it ourselves. I mean, isn't it interesting how miracles seem to dry up quite a bit as soon as cameras were invented? All of a sudden, miracles are reduced to Jesus' face on toast. Either miracles have always been bullshit, or God decided he had to hide more now that we could catch him on video. Can't risk showing up, then people won't need to believe entirely on faith, and we can't have that. God's followers need to believe for no good reason in spite of the evidence, because reasons.
Do you think that a society that is run by Christians or atheists would be safer? Why?
Atheists aren't expecting some divine safety net to catch them or to punish wrongdoers later. Atheists have to take the world as it is, face value, and that leads to more practical solutions to problems without a lot of no, we can't do that's because some ancient book put in a lot of archaic no-nos that don't even come close to applying to today's world.
Do you believe in free will? Free will being the ability to make choices without coercion. If you believe in free will, do you see any problem with defending the idea that the physical brain, which is limited and subject to the neurochemical laws of the brain, can still produce free will choices?
That definition of free will does not match the one in Wikipedia, nor does it match my own. Coercion is, by definition, being acted upon by an outside force, while free will is the ability to choose between different courses of action, or the power to break the causal chain of events so that one's choice is uncaused by any previous event, external or internal. Even while being coerced, one has choices of action. This is not necessarily the case when talking about origination, the breaking of the causal chain. Taking the definition from this set of questions, then yes, I believe in free will, since even if the brain is limited by biology, it is not being coerced by an outside agency. However, taking the definitions from Wikipedia, I'm not entirely certain I do believe in free will. It certainly seems as though we have it, but it may simply be that the factors at play are just too complicated, or ones which we cannot perceive with our limited senses, and so we cannot see that which determines our actions. To be honest, given the facts I have at my command, I'm actually less inclined to believe in free will than otherwise, regardless of how it feels.
If you affirm evolution and that the universe will continue to expand forever, then do you think it is probable that given enough time, brains would evolve to the point of exceeding mere physical limitations and become free of the physical and temporal, and thereby become deity and not be restricted by space and time? If not, why not?
Oh, this question misses the boat in so many ways. For starters, evolution is not this inexorable march towards some superbeing status. Evolution by natural selection is adaptation by a species to its environment. The notion that brains would somehow evolve past physical limitations is ludicrous at best. How that would even happen as a result of natural selection is perplexing. Even if humanity developed technology that could do it, what would it even mean? How would individuality, personality, awareness even be maintained without a brain? And how would being free of the physical also mean no longer being bound by time? And how would this state of being be defined as deity? Assuming they're real, are angels deities? Are ghosts the people in the afterlife? The entire question is based on shaky premises at best and is all but unanswerable.
If you answered the previous question in the affirmative, then aren't you saying that it is probable that some sort of God exists?
I didn't, but let's suppose for a moment that I did. The closest you would get to a god would be something like Q from Star Trek, and probably not even that. Q is far more powerful than what you've proposed. You certainly wouldn't get some sort of all-powerful creator deity that had existed eternally, not even if they weren't bound by the temporal, which is still a concept that seems capable of existing solely in the imagination. All you posited was beings that didn't need the physical to exist. This did not include magical powers that allowed them to create anything physical, like a universe. You didn't even describe a way that these disembodied spirit beings could affect the physical in any way. At best, it sounds as if you'd get these terribly lonely ghosts, unable to interact with the physical world, existing forever with nothing to do. Sounds like a real blast. Would it be probable that a God exists if this were possible? Maybe, but it sure wouldn't be your God. And I'm spent. Until next time, fellow space travelers, this is BionicDance saying don't run on automatic. Instead, please think.
So, who wants cake? You have to rate first.